Wayne shared some vulnerable parts to him, as you could tell, and it's when we do that that we actually develop trust and connection with others. You know, business sales is all about establishing trust with each other and thank you. So when you get back and you're going to get busy and you have that Wrigley amnesia that we talked about, we want you to really log in and make sure that you focus on the module that talks about telling your story. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about mine and how it folds into the scouting and drafting process and building a powerful network. But I can tell you how to build the most powerful network in all the world. You can make as much as you want at sales. You can develop your business wherever you want to. But if people approach you and connect to you and they don't trust you, how long are those relationships going to last? And that's whether you're climbing up the ladder. We help people climb up in executive presence. We help people achieve sales. We help them develop, partnerships and opportunities, and sometimes change entire careers. So we do this, and we have that with the power of others. Now, I grew up as well on the South Side. Anybody else here grow up on the South Side besides Wayne and I? No, all North Siders and West Siders, huh? Good. It has its rough parts. So does the West Side, depending on where you're from. So early on, I started I was born in a farmhouse in Northwest Indiana. Did anybody else grow up on a farm? Look I'm the only, oh, there we go, one other in there. A lot of chores, right? Well, I was a little young at the time, so it wasn't so bad. But I was one of those kids that when I was old enough to walk, I was always escaping, and I never knew why. I was always getting out of the house. They couldn't find me, and I just never. They just never knew why. They couldn't keep me contained. I was hungry and looking for something. So fast forward, we then, when I'm in first grade, decide my dad had met my mom in England. We leave to go to England because we're going to move to Australia. We ship all of our things there and to Australia, and we stop in England, and my dad gets sick, and we lose all of our possessions. So here I am, a strange kid in a strange land, and I'm the kid with the funny accent. And I get picked on, I get bullied, and we're in downtown London, and I'm running the streets of London, scrapping and fighting my way to make my name, to get to know people. And I was hungry for connection, but it was almost like I had to fight for it. I had to be the tough kid. Then my parents, after about 3 years, decide it's not working out. My dad brings us back to the States, and I moved to Calumet City into my grandfather's house. And so we move in there, and Cal City is a rough and tumble sort of place. And all of a sudden I'm in school, and I'm getting picked on because I'm the kid with the funny accent. So what you hear now is a combination of English, British, mix of South Side, and whatever else Chicago brings to us. So as I'm scrapping and fighting for this notoriety, it was the first time my dad had 3 younger brothers that were closer to my age than his age. And anybody in here have older brothers or bigger brothers? And so, there's mixed things where they make you tough. Maybe they pick on you, but at least you knew you had family. And I had a younger sister, but it was the first time that, my dad was always working. My grandparents had already raised their kids, and I was just an unattended kid, that was just really running the streets. And I was just hungry for connection and wanting to be with others. So as we're going through this, my dad gets remarried. We then move across the border into Hammond, which is a fine suburb of Gary if you've never been there. But Gary has its rough parts too. So we're in South Hammond, which is sort of the poorer part of Hammond. And, they did all they could. They were scraping things together. And at that time, we were in a small little 3-bedroom house, and it was, I think, all of $14,000 was the price of the house. Imagine first house, $14,000. And so we're living there, and again, I'm being bullied, picked on, and I'm like, what the hell is it with this world? Everywhere I go, I'm getting bullied, and I have to fight my way in there. So one summer, I don't know if you guys remember this. Remember Bazooka Bubblegum? Well, they had the cartoon, and then you flipped it over, and they had the thing where the bully was kicking the sand in the face of the kid, and I go, that's me. And then they had this thing you could order that was a single thing that you could stretch and squeeze it together. And I go, I saved up. I had a paper route. I saved up all my paper route money, and I bought one of those things. And I spent an entire 3 months working out, waking up before anybody after my paper route. This is like 4 a.m, and I would start running. And I was determined to be conditioned. And then all of a sudden, I came out, and there was a place we used to hang out. It was called the Flushers. I know it sounds crazy, but it's where all the sewer water comes out into the river that goes into the Chicago River. But it was like, a place where people hung out, and it was just a big brick structure. People spray painted their name to claim their territory. And all of a sudden, I go there, and everybody's just like looking at me. And I'm walking out with all my muscle and going, hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? And this one guy who was the toughest kid goes, hey, crazy, how you doing? And that name stuck with me back in the time. I was literally always an angry kid, but underneath I had a lot of hurt, and I was always hungry for that connection. And for me, that was a way to establish that connection. So now I'm like, oh, I'm running around with the tough kids. Now I matter. So now when I go to the sandlot and we get picked, I'm starting to get picked first. And I got pretty good at baseball. Bathroom, you guys need, right? Okay, yeah. Coffee's for closers, but you got to. Okay. So anyway, I started to establish some respect on the street, if you will. But now, growing up a little bit in that area, it got tougher and tougher. And I was really distant with my stepmom, and I was sort of a confused, troubled kid, and I grew up with a lot of influences where, it was easy to turn to drugs, and it was easy to get into fights and be that rebel because it got me attention. And so that was the tough part. And like Wayne said, being the South Side rough and tumble kid, it was natural for me to do wrestling, to do some level of martial arts, to do football, and things that were just aggression. I could get that aggression out. That was part of who I was. My next job that I got was bussing tables. Has anybody in here besides me ever bussed tables? Look around. That is one hell of a job. At the time, I think it was $1.10 an hour plus tips. And you had to bust your ass for those tips. So I get a job in a steakhouse. Now I should go back for a minute. When I was delivering newspapers, I had one of the largest routes, but at the end of our block was a country club. And I would ride there every morning, and I'd go, someday I'm getting into that country club. Someday I'm getting in there. So, and I'd go there, and they would shoo me away from time to time because I'd try to get toward the gate. And I said, well, where I grew up, you broke into the country club, but I'm not doing that. But I said, I'm getting in there somehow. Somehow I'm going to figure it out. But anyway, so now I'm in this fine dine restaurant bussing tables, all business guys, all politicians. Freddy's Steakhouse. And I write more detail about this in the book, but it was interesting because it was the first time in my life that I saw business guys. Now, my dad worked 2 jobs, night school, and was always a networker, and he always did some sort of multi-level marketing. At the time, it was Shackley, but always holding meetings. And so I got the networking sales thing from him, but it was this connecting part and leveraging relationships and helping each other that I never had before. Because on the streets, it's like there's a level of trust, but there's also a level of fear that creates that trust. Just like in business, when we start a business, it's almost like we're afraid to tell people that we're doing anything until we sort of have our shit together And then we let everybody know, and then we sort of move into it. It's that moment that we decide, oh, it's okay to tell people I need help. It's okay to connect. So in the restaurant, I'm making all these amazing connections to the point where I meet the guy at the corner that has all the limos and stuff like that, and I meet the guy that has all kinds of side jobs. That if I want to make extra money, he could help me do side jobs. No matter what I needed, I could have. I'm about 15 years old. I'm not driving yet, and I wanted to impress a girl and take her on a date, church carnival. But I wanted to do it in style. I didn't want my parents to drop me off. Everybody else was doing that. Or they hung out with the older kids to drop them off. So I go to the limo guy. He would sit at the bar every day. And I go, Charlie, how much does it cost to rent a limo? He goes, you don't have that kind of money. I go, how much is it? What's the best you can do? He goes, a Wednesday night, $65 all in for 4 hours. And we'll make sure that includes the tip. And we can make that happen. I go, man, that's a lot of money at $1.10 an hour. Plus you're buying other stuff, right? And so I go, okay. And so I did a side job. I got the money together. So then all of a sudden I get this limo, church carnival, opening night, and picks up myself. And you can imagine the expression on my parents' face as we're on this little, lower middle class neighborhood and the limo pulls up. My dad's like, what's going on? Who's this? I go, that's my ride. I'm taking Jill to the carnival. He goes, what? I go, yeah, Charlie at Freddy's hooked me up. I'm taking a limo. And I go, wow, this is cool. So, we do the limo, and she's all dazzled, and worked out for a few years, but didn't last. But anyway, the thing is, I discovered, wow, if I had cool people in my network. Now, I didn't tell you how I raised the extra money. I said, Charlie, do you have any extra work? He goes, yeah, why don't you come in on Sunday and help me wash all the limos? And I go, okay. So then I started doing that on Sundays, and I sort of built up cash, and I was able to make some more connections with Charlie. And Charlie was like the king of side jobs. He wasn't just a limo guy. He had a car lot. He owned a lawnmower business. And when I needed other extra cash, yes, I dressed up as the Easter Bunny for $100 a pop for a day gig. So I was like, wow, and did Santa a few times. So anyway, so there's this whole networking aspect. And so I learned about networking out. And the owner of the restaurant had a yacht. And it was on the back of his bar, and it was called Mr. Martini. And I go, now I'm going to get to the yacht club. I had my sights set on it. So then I would hang out, and I would help Mr. Mattson clean that restaurant, whatever he needed. And I go, and they would leave every Saturday night, and a bunch of us would go to John's Pizza in Calumet City, and party till 3 in the morning. And the cool kids would go on the yacht, the cool adults. So anyway, one night I said, hey, Mr. Mattson, do you need help cleaning that boat before you guys go out on that yacht? And he goes, well, yes, I do. He goes, you could help out with that. I go, yes, I can. He goes, I'll even flip you some cash. I'm thinking, yes, you will. So now all of a sudden, through the owner of the restaurant, I'm like, wow, all of a sudden I've got, I'm getting to the yacht club. Then, of course, since I'm already there, Dean, why don't you just sleep over and go out on the boat with us tomorrow? Now, this took almost a year to get to that status, but I had built that trust and connection with him. Now, fast forward a little more, I'm starting to go to Purdue Cal for hospitality because I own a restaurant. That was my passion. I wanted to own one of these because people connected, and I felt connected to everybody. And it was a natural place for me to be able to meet people and connect to people. And so, now all of a sudden I'm like part of this yacht club, and now the customers get to know me, and they want to sit in my section because I was the best. I busted my ass. There was never dirty dishes laying there, your water glasses, your coffee was always filled. I'd get the waitress if you needed her. I busted my ass. I was the head busboy. Big status. So, and you got a few extra bucks. So now I'm establishing all this rapport. Almost like, I sort of, felt like I ran the place. It was, I owned the success of the experience in that restaurant. So now, all of a sudden, this gentleman who was coming in had moved in from Chicago, the big city. So he moves in, and he's the new CEO of Merrill Lynch Chicago at the Board of Trade. And I go, wow, this guy's a big shot. And he was always entertaining people. He had his own corner booth, and he was the guy. And I made sure he was taken care of because I could tell. And I'm just assuming he belonged to a country club, so I still had my sights set there. So then he wanted to cater some parties, and I go, I'll help you. He goes, all right, cool. You can help me do that? And I go, yeah, I've been watching this catering thing, and I can help entertain. I'll get you the food. I know the meat guy. I know the liquor guy. So I started plugging myself into all those connections. And so one night, we're sitting there. So you got to imagine I'm 19, getting ready to turn 20. About 3 in the morning, I'm hanging out with the CEO of Merrill Lynch, and we are wasted. And he's in this big stereo room. Now, do you remember that commercial, those of us that are older? I don't know. So when we're sitting there, do you remember the old commercial where the guy's sitting there and there's the giant speakers in front of him and it's blowing the chair back? Well, we were in that kind of room, reel to reel, a wall full of equipment and a ton of speakers. And I'm like, I'm going to go for it. Mr. Bradley, yes, Dean? And he's like, we weren't just drinking, by the way. So Merrill Lynch, use your imagination. So anyway, yes, Dean? What would it take for me to work downtown at the Board of Trade with all those computers and all that cool stuff you guys are doing? Dean, I like you. You're a good guy. You're a hard worker. You can start in 2 weeks. I'm like, wait. I'm a freshman in college going for hotel restaurant management. Okay. I had no idea. I knew I was tinkering with computers at Purdue. They were still punch cards by then. Do you know what those are? Okay, I just didn't know. Punch cards, wow. So anyway, I had a flashback. So now all of a sudden, I find this connection has now the power of the ask, facing my fear, and the power of the ask got me what I wanted. So I learned so much in such a short period of time with that. I just kept doing that. I just kept connecting and connecting and connecting. So it was interesting because I had never lived that sort of life. Now, when I got to the city, the only thing I could afford was an apartment in Rochester. Other guys that I knew. I took the subway down every day, and I worked. I switched to going to school downtown. And so, but I still made connections. It was all about those new connections. And so I connected to my manager, and I connected to my manager's manager, but the CEO always wanted us to sort of hang with him and do things for him. Now, he knows I grew up in Hammond. He lives in Hammond, big house. But then as I'm working for him, he would take myself and a couple of my friends and send us in a limousine to go buy drugs in Hammond. I worked my ass to get out of that. And I'm right back there. And it was hard. It was like hostage partying, and then all of a sudden I was sent on these missions, and I said, no, it's not about just connecting to get to that country club. You have to find good people. People that are on the same mission to the good things that you want, to the same destination that you want. And this is when the game changed for me. So he wound up, fast forward, getting, and for a 21-year-old kid to have complete access and right hand to the CEO, parties and limos. It was okay for a while. Street kid downtown. You've all seen Wolf of Wall Street. All that shit goes on. It's true. But I was like, man, I needed to get away from that. I wanted something better. So he wound up getting busted and indicted because he was leveraging company funds to buy all of his cocaine and his drugs. He was embezzling. So, and anybody that got hired sort of got the fingerprint of that. And eventually they found reasons to fire us. So I had my experience of corporate America going from rock star to backstabbing in a short couple of years. Then I had to go find a job. And then I started networking, and the only thing I could find, because I was resistant to unemployment, were side gigs. I didn't have enough skills. I wasn't a programmer yet. I was going for operations and programming. So I found the Children's Home and Aid Society on a job board. You guys ever heard of them? Amazing organization. They help all kinds of kids and families in the city of Chicago. I pulled down that job board listing, $6.95 an hour. I was making 27. I got to close the gap so I can make rent and stuff. So I had to work some other side jobs and go to school. So I was no stranger to hustling and making, creating side jobs. But I went to the president and I said, look, she goes, you're overqualified. I said, I know, I need this job. But I want a deal. I said, I'm going to program for you for free if you become a reference for me, if you believe my work is good and you believe my work is good, I want you to be a reference for me so that I can move on to bigger and better things. She goes, deal. So I was the fastest data entry person she ever had. And so I started coding for free. And I networked with the other programmers. Within 3 months, one of the other programmers came to me and said, hey, my husband is an IBM engineer and Midland Ross Corporation needs a COBOL programmer to help them with a payroll system. I didn't know what a payroll system was. I had just gotten payroll checks. Didn't understand it, but I knew COBOL. So I said, what's it paying? She goes, $30 an hour. I go, how many hours a week? You can have up to 40. It didn't take long to do the math. I go, that's awesome. So then I became a system certified programmer. I got the gig. I opened my first LLC at the age of 22, and I began to own companies and still connect, but to the right people. So I started to understand the value of that. So I then developed, through all the years, an entire system by which to make these connections and make the connections count. Now, what's interesting is when social media came along, everybody here's on LinkedIn, at least, right? Raise your hand. Yeah, everybody? Okay. So you might have been like me, that I went back to the street kid and I started connecting and accepting everybody. It was the great social race. I got 1,000 connections. I've got 2,000 connections. Now, keep in mind when LinkedIn came along, I already had a minor career in marketing and CRM, and it was all about the data and the massive amounts of data and reaching all the people. But I sort of got caught up in the hype and I lost the importance of those great connections. So I'm going to talk to you today about a system that we use, and then I'm going to also give you the system after you get back, because like I said, but the goal here today with each other is I want you to make sure you go out of your way during networking to meet at least 5 people you've never met before. But I want you to take turns sharing your story. Maybe the parts of who you are at work and maybe your company, but the things that you love to do when you're not working, and maybe how you've gotten to this moment in your career or your life. And what's interesting is some of you are going through transitions and startups and different things, and you can help each other out. And you're only here because you're all amazing, great people. You were either invited in by the sponsors, you bought tickets, and we looked at each and every one of you, and we know that you're all amazing, great people, and we want that for each of you together. So I want to be careful that you're not going to just cling to maybe the person that you know or the people that you came here with, but promise me at least meet 5 people that you didn't know before this day. Does everybody agree? Okay. So Joe Cruzan, I'm going to pick on you. Yeah, you've got a little less hair than I do. So Joe is a retired fire chief and Eagle Scout. Retired fire chief and had done all of his service, and I didn't realize he was an EMS specialist. So when he was retired, he was doing all these cool things, and I go, oh, I'm a little jealous. Joe's retired now. He gets to do all these cool things. And next thing I know, I met him at a grad party a few weeks ago, and he goes, I'm now going to be a national sales director and a consultant. And I've been in sales and consulting my whole life. This is exciting. I can actually help Joe. I couldn't help him when he was a fire chief because he was a rock star. I mean, I couldn't tell him anything to do in that game. But now I know I can help you. And I have people that can help you. And now I'm just like, wow, this is super cool. And that's what I mean. I want you to discover the parts of you that can help somebody else. Right? I hope you're taking notes. All right. That sounds like an evil laugh, doesn't it? He is. He legitimately always takes notes, so I was just giving him a hard time. So with this, there's a commitment. There's a little bit of a system here that I want to talk about. So let's go through a little bit of this as we get in here. So I had the opportunity that when I started making money, when I had all the companies, that I had gotten Hawks season tickets, which is how I heard Wayne that night that he mentions. I had Cubs season tickets and Bulls season tickets all at the same time. That's a lot of games. You know how many home games the Cubs have? How many? Yeah. So the good news is we had 4 seats, so we got to split those up a little bit. But now you start adding them up. Dinners in Greektown, parking. Yes, we had to make a lot of money, and we were making a lot of money back then. It was about $200,000 a year in entertainment, which was a better write-off than what it is today. But the idea was I got to study during the time that we had great teams and bad teams. I got to see the Blackhawks, the Stanley Cup at the old stadium hoisted by Pittsburgh, not by the Hawks. I got to see Michael Jordan win championships, greatness. I got to see the Cubs win a division but not go all the way. And I was like, what's the difference in a great team making it and not making it? And have you guys ever heard the term, especially in Chicago, it's a rebuilding year? We're rebuilding. Yes. Although I compliment the White Sox. I think they're on a good track here. So, but the idea was, and I also then got a contract with the Chicago Bears because I was a big Chicago Bears fan. So we decided I'm going to figure out a way to get into Hallis Hall. So a buddy of mine was a statistician, and he got me a meeting, and we sold some things to the Bears, and it was sort of cool. And he's walking me down Hallis Hall. I get to meet Walter Payton, which was super cool. And I'm walking down Hallis Hall, and I go, and he goes, that's the war room. And I go, what happens in the war room? Do you guys know about the war room? So you know about Draft Day, right? So Draft Day, if you've ever watched that, you should watch Draft Day movie after this. So write that down, Kevin Costner, Draft Day. It's a very educational movie about you building your team as well as how a team gets built. So he goes, the war room is where we decide how we're going to build a better team than anybody else in the NFL, and we're going to win the championship, right? We're going to take it all. We're going to get to the Super Bowl. We're going to win the Super Bowl, and this is how it's done. And I was like, wow. And then I got to meet the scouts. So I'm meeting with the scouts, and I got fascinated by this whole part. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I got a connection at the Blackhawks. Oh, I'm a season ticket holder. I can meet some of the other scouts. And Wayne, that's why I brought up the thing about the new scouts that the Cubs have. I want to tap in and see what's changing a little bit too. So I started meeting with scouts. And Charlie Rose, I believe, was one of the first ones. And so when I talked to Charlie, I'm like, Charlie, when is, I know when draft season is and when you guys make the picks. And yeah, I was hoping my phone was going to ring too last night, but it didn't. So when's draft season? When do they make the picks? And he goes, well, we make the picks and we start lining it up. And I said, well, when do you guys, what's the season that you work? Because I knew baseball season, I knew spring training and all that stuff. And he's like, we work every day, 365 days a year, even on holidays. Holidays, we're having dinners with families and we're building relationships so that we can always know the character and the best players coming. Because they said, talent is one thing, character is another. And he goes, we need to have trust that the player is going to play full out all the time, full tilt, and when the going gets tough, that we can count on them. So there's all kinds of levels. And what's cool about that movie, Draft Day, is they actually explore all that in that movie. Now, if I were going to, we take people through an exercise when we have them have draft day in our courses, and we have them map out their team. Tom Meyer, you've done this several times. So we have them map out their team, and we're like, who are the top 5 players? Who's your starting lineup? Now, when I was playing Sandlot, I don't know, did anybody else play Sandlot ball in here in baseball? Just a couple of us. So it was always about not getting picked last and being dependable and good enough. So if you weren't picked first, more than likely you were practicing somewhere on the side against the schoolyard wall or my dad's garage or whatever. But you would always work to get better. Well, what's interesting is when I have people pick the top 5 people in their network that they have top relationships with, that exchange referrals all the time, that are there through thick and thin, that help each other out. You help them generate business. They help you. It's a tough list for people to list those top 5. And when they start listing them, they'll open up their phone and they'll say, well, who are you having the most frequent conversations with? Who are you emailing the most with? And all of a sudden you have this list and you look at it and you go, but that's not helping me get any farther than where I am. This is where I'm at this moment. And some of you are top producers and some of you are striving for the next level of production, whatever that looks like. And it could be helping you build the company, or it could be helping you generate sales. It's whatever it is for you, or in career as you climb the ladder. It's both for you, Aaron. So it's like both of that, right? So you need to understand that. So what's interesting is we help people build this team. We do the starting lineup. We do the bench. We have some fun with it. We even create a farm team. So as I do this, there's a little bit of science behind this. If you served in the military, please stand right now. Anybody that has served in the military? All right, let's give them an applause, please. Thank you. So sorry, the U.S. Army was involved in leading this initiative, but all armed forces were involved along with 18 other countries. Yes. Navy man, can you tell? So what they did is they got a bunch of scientists together and they said they studied intentional and unintentional building of networks. Now they used it to flush out Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. They used it for military purposes. And I said, well, James, why can't we use it for sales? Right? So you remember when Bob talked about this? Yep. So network science, there's a proven science that all of us control our destiny based on the network that we have. Did the 2 Salvatoris meet finally? Okay, good. We have 2 Salvatoris and 1 workshop. Never happened, ever. Well, the 2 Salvatoris stand, please, because I want to make sure everybody knows who you are. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Now, as we just made that link between 2 connections, right? Now, we don't know if they can help each other yet, but it's a possibility if they're all striving for the same piece of business, where I think actually you, appropriately sitting next to Frank Montreux, have a monster opportunity here. and then Tony right there you need to meet. So I think with just the three of you and the power of your networks and the businesses that are related that you are in, Frank, it's not about the business card. It's about the relationship. So you could not only form a cluster that can help each other, but you could become hubs. Now, Frank, I know for a fact is a hub. Tony's a hub. I'm not sure yet if you've gotten to that status yet, but that means that you have clusters of related people that can help each other get to the next level. And you have no doubt about referring people to people that you trust, and you're good at it, and you can identify that. Now, the most successful people that we study, just like sports teams, have the capability to build this ongoing, consciously. Not just build it once and keep the same team. Do the Cubs have the same team from 5 years ago? Do they constantly make changes that drive us crazy sometimes and we don't know why they make them? Yes. So how about that Almora, huh? He keeps working his way back in there. That's pretty good. So things like that. So you gauge it and you're conscious every day. So while you're here, you're scouting. You're the general manager of your team and you're consciously scouting for people that you can help that can also help you. So as you're talking to somebody and listening, I want you to listen to human connecting qualities and then also two of you to connect at a deeper level. And one rule of engagement that we have together is that we don't want you connecting and making a promise for that cup of coffee and then not doing it. Don't do that. Either have the intent to connect and engage and be sincere and real and follow up and have that coffee with that person or cocktail or whatever it is, or that meeting. Pick up the phone when they call, respond to the email when they call. But if you really are sincere about it, tell them. If you're not, tell them. It's okay. You might have a referral that's better than you for them. So I want that intent here together at this, sort of festive workshop environment. And then we're going to carry and track this over the course of the next 90 days. Because guess what? You're all on LinkedIn, and we can see what you're doing. So we also want you that when you're in the network, and what we have people do when we do this is we have them build their personal brand and their core team, but then around you are other champions and then external partners. So I want you to start being more conscious about the people that you connect to here and where do they fall. Are they part of this core team that you're going to have with your starting lineup and your bench players, or are they really some champions that you could have around you? And how many teams do you have? Or how many in your sales team? 5. So they might be part of that 5. Might just be you two. But there might be other people in the company that are the ones that become part of that team, that team that you form a little different bond with. Now, what makes it different in social selling, which is what we call this, is the only difference is that you have the intent to connect on, with them on social media. So what does that do for you? Well, Frank and I, we have a good trust. We have good connecting networks. We refer back and forth. I think we have a reasonable friendship when we're getting along most times. So, so when we do that, we also play together on social media. And people know that we're friends on social media. So that looks like the fact that, wow, Frank and Dean are together. And between us, I'm a hub in my industry, he's a hub in his industry. And now people have an automatic trust between us because they see the engagement. And so what we're going to do is give you things to do online, super easy, within minutes a day, to actually make those connections with the people that count, not with the 300, 400, 500 million that are in there, but maybe just with the top 40 players that we want you to originally formulate and connect to. And it's a simple system. It doesn't matter if you're in sales, if you're in customer service. but you're all part of the organization that helps develop the organization. And not only that, it helps what we call humanize the brand. So I just met with a global company on Monday, and they're like, well, we have 2,000 salespeople. I'm like, great. I need 5. I need 5 people in the organization that are willing to follow this system and play this game. So I said, okay. So we got there 5, and we're going to have a pilot program. Now, we started that with GE 7 years ago. We now have trained several thousand people within GE in over 25 countries, and now their aviation, medical division, and power division are the top 3 in their industry because we started with 5, 5, and 5. So you don't need thousands of employees, hundreds of people, but we humanized the brand so that they knew it wasn't just about the logo or the brand, but it was about the people. And Aaron, that's the difference in this. It's not about all the numbers, but you get to the numbers by humanizing the brand through the people. Make sense? So as we do this, each and every one of you have a network. And so we have the power of you, but we have the power of connected associations. So who here belongs to an association? What's the association? Which one? Oh, Board of Longevity. Okay. There you go. Tom? MBBI, Midwest Business Brokers and Intermediaries. There you go. So that is a way for you to now not just engage with each other, but then we have you list the top associations and hubs that you have. So we want you to not only connect and engage with each other and your team, but we want you to also engage online with those hubs, because when you go to the meeting, and how long have you been part of that group? And they have meetings annually, or? And you go to those? State ones. Do they know who you are when you come in? So you become known, right? So you become known. People know you and yours, right? Tom, I know you've been the president of MBBI. So you become known. Well, the fact is, you come to an event for an association, you leave, and then we go and we get busy, and then on the next meeting, we act like we haven't seen each other since the last meeting. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's months, sometimes it's a month to month. Sound familiar, Nancy Reed? So now all of a sudden, we have the opportunity to find and scout the people in the association now that can be part of that core team. And so we're going to give you this real easy system where you just connect to 2 people a day, and you're scouting and drafting every single day, and it takes less than 10 minutes a day. Is everybody willing to try this? Now, today we're going to practice it together. You're going to scout together human to human, and then we want to make sure that you have an agreement that if it looks like it could work out, or you could help each other, maybe not directly, but through a referral, is to follow up and make that connection on LinkedIn, and then you decide if other social networks apply. Those are personal choices. But we want you to see the power of these teams and where it goes, and then eventually we're going to have you scout and build your core team, and then we're going to have a draft where you decide if you put people. Sorry, Sal, it's just not working out between us. So I'm going to put you on the farm team. I'm going to send you down, okay? But you're doing a good job. But we'll bring you back maybe in a couple months. Take some hitting lessons, throwing, catching. We'll work on that batting average. We'll bring you back up. So that's what happens in baseball, right? Who did they send down that we were shocked that they sent down and haven't brought back yet? Huh? Okay, that's my baseball girl back there. But the idea is, sometimes we don't know why, sometimes we do know why, and it's obvious. But there's reasons we make those decisions. So don't be afraid to send somebody, to the farm team and play them every once in a while and move somebody up and develop that relationship a little deeper for yourself. Make sense? Cool. All right. So we're going to give you access to this whole platform when you log in. There's a video to get started. Super easy. It automatically plays. You log in. It tells you how to get going. You go to courses. We're going to give you specific instructions of what to take first. There's over 1,000 classes, and there's several courses, but we're going to instruct you to build your story and then build your team. And I'm telling you, if you just do those 2 modules and you do nothing else, I guarantee you at least 20 referrals. Or you come see me personally, okay? So we'll make sure that happens. Is Mark here yet? Can somebody check it? Okay, any questions on this? So I want to hear what people have heard on the team building part. So what have you guys heard? Like for you, like what was coming up as I was talking about building your team?
I mean, a lot of it is just looking at where the value lies in the connection that I currently have and how to build out some more valuable connections. Sometimes you waste time on things that really don't matter and aren't going to benefit you or myself. But more so just finding that actual avenue to get through people who are working. My whole life has been networking. It's how I grew up. I'm Jewish, we call it Jewish geography. Everybody has a guy, everybody knows somebody. That's part of this, what's developed in my life, but finding the values of one, finding the ones that actually make a difference.
Well, and you agree there has to be mutuality in there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, if you're asking somebody to do something for you, but you can't do anything for them, what value are you to them?
Right. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I'm so excited. Give him an applause. That is huge right there. So I get so frustrated because sometimes we'll train teams of 20, teams of 50, and it'll drive me insane when all of a sudden they get excited that they're generating inbound referrals, but they're not putting anything out. So I say a good best practice to break this habit is to give. Give first, and then let it come back. And I think more and more of that has to happen, you know? And the people that just are the net takers will weed themselves out, you know, of your network, and you'll weed them out. And they could maybe have some of the best killer referrals, but you know what? You can get to those referrals without them. So we show you ways to work around what we call toxic team members. Have you ever been on a sports team or part of a team where just one person is what we call pissing in the soup? That's what we call it. So it's you know, because now the soup tastes bad and one person is causing it because all it takes is one person to piss in the soup. So the idea is so now you have a new phrase. But the idea is, you know, to make sure that we don't hang on to the toxic people. As Wayne said, you know, we can figure out what's creating the sort of toxic part of it. Is there a part of the relationship that we could be responsible, that we could own better, that we could do a better job with? So there's different ways to work that out. And there's times when I just, you know, flat out ask people, I notice I've been giving you some things lately, but I haven't gotten anything in return. And then you have a honest conversation about that. And you'll be surprised how many people are grateful for the conversation. So make sure that you have those honest, direct conversations, and you'll be shocked with how things come back. So super, super cool and exciting stuff. There's also episodes. How many people here have downloaded or listened to the podcast, The Influence Factory? Raise your hand. Frank, you've been on it. Didn't you at least listen to your episode? So the Influence Factory are inspirational stories, and we find people just like you or people that are, you know, maybe influencers that are a notch or two above, but we want you to hear their inspirational stories and how they broke through things and how they got to that next level, and how for themselves they just, you know, all of a sudden just had a self-discovery of telling a part of their story that changed everything. And so when I was writing the book first, I put a lot of things in there that I was scared about. I cried, I laughed, I re-experienced trauma and emotion as part of that. So, you know, sometimes it's not always an easy thing to do to explore your story, But I'm telling you, once you start sharing things with people and you become a little more vulnerable about who you are, you'll be shocked at what relationships that opens up and what connections that makes.